My name is Larry Phillips. I'm the Region 6 Director for Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife, and I want to first of all thank everyone for joining us this evening. This is, I think, our fourth regional live virtual meeting, and this is Region 6, obviously, and just want to share that we really appreciate the opportunity to hear directly from the people we serve and talk about fish and wildlife conservation and management in the state. It looks like some people are still joining us here, so we'll get started in a minute. But I also wanted to share that Director Kelly Susewind has also joined us here tonight. So thanks, Kelly. Appreciate that, and give you an opportunity to introduce yourself here.
Thanks, Larry. My name is Kelly Susewind. I'm the director here at Fish and Wildlife, and excited to be out here tonight. As Larry said, this is an ongoing effort for us to get out into the regions and actually connect directly with the people we serve. Started it a few years ago. Look forward to the time when we come out and actually be there in person again, but for now this will do. I'm pretty excited about tonight. As we're going around the state this time, we're making sure to bring in each of the regional management teams. So these are the managers in your area that are running the programs, fish, wildlife, enforcement, all of our programs. So the activities are actually occurring in your region. These are the folks that are running that or managing that for you. So these are the folks you really want to know. If you head into Region 6, these are the folks behind the door doing the work for you. So excited about having that connection here tonight. Look forward to it. We're going to save at least a big chunk of the night for Q&A. That's really the emphasis for this. We want to hear from you. Talk with you, not talk at you. So I'll kick it back to Larry. Thanks again for being here.
Yeah, thanks, Kelly, and appreciate you joining us tonight. So maybe just a quick rundown here. We're going to start tonight with some updates on a few topics that we're working on within the department here. I do want to let you know that we are recording the event tonight, so if folks want to check it out later, there's certainly that opportunity. And as Kelly said, we're committing most of the time this evening to Q&A. There's lots of things happening. It's been popular here with the other regions, so we're looking forward to that option. And to help us with that, I want to give my regional management team members a chance to introduce themselves. And so probably want to start first off here with Brian Calkins. Brian's our wildlife program manager. We'll get Brian to click his screen on.
I was having trouble with the mic. I'm Brian Calkins. I'm the Regional Wildlife Program Manager. I think maybe the thing that I would have to share most tonight that's been on my mind is that when I came onto this job, I quickly recognized I was leading a group of people that had been here quite a while and knew what they were doing. And over about the last month and a half, we've seen two people with over 30 years of experience retire. And so I'm looking at my most important job coming up. And actually we've filled one of the positions, is getting those positions filled with good people to carry on the future of the agency.
Great, thanks, Brian. Next, let's go to James Losey, who's our fish program regional manager.
Hey everybody, my name is James Losey. I'm the regional program manager for fish program in Region 6. You know, I won't dig deep into the background of myself, but I grew up in Washington State, been a resident here for a long time, enjoying the outdoors. I supervise a pretty big team here, thinking about things all the way from Razer Clam to spring Chinook. So a lot to talk about tonight. This last year has been really challenging with a couple sort of hot topics. Specifically, coastal steelhead's been a big one, but we've also had a lot of things that we've been high-fiving about. Chinook, chum, coho, pink, Razer Clam seasons have been great, Dungeness crab. So excited to talk about all those things and also answer questions if I can help with anything specific. So yeah, thanks for having me, Larry.
Thanks for that, James. I'll turn it over to Captain Chadwick next, please.
Good evening, everyone. Dan Chadwick, been a captain here in Region 6 now for 6 years. been an officer for almost or just over 21 years now. So pretty familiar with the region, and supervise 5 detachments, 5 sergeants. With right now, we only have 18 officers, if you can believe it, in this large region. So we're filling those ranks and doing it as quick as we can. So appreciate everybody joining in.
Thanks, Captain. We are currently have a vacancy for our habitat program manager at this point. We are in the process of interviewing for that. So we hope to have somebody on soon. But so what I'm going to do at this point is, I think we've got a PowerPoint I want to share real quick, and we'll spend a little bit of time just familiarizing folks with the region. So again, we're at the Regional 6 open house, and I appreciate everybody jumping on here to join us. My name's Larry Phillips. I've been with the department for about 24 years. I'm a Washington lifetime resident, and spent most of my time growing up in the Arlington area. Been in Olympia now for almost 20 years. So we've seen the challenges with the opportunity, recreational, commercial habitat. We've got a team of folks that are working on a variety of different issues to address the challenges that we face, and some of the uncertainty as far as the future goes. We feel confident that we're making headway, but the challenges are many, and those are the population of the state has added 1 million people in the last 10 years. And those folks that have come to the state of Washington have an expectation to enjoy the same things that those of us who grew up here have always enjoyed. And we are challenged with how we're going to address those needs. But the coast of the Region 6 is a large area, from Clallam County to Pacific County, and then over to South Puget Sound, including Pierce County and Thurston County. Next slide, please. Just a quick map. You can see it's a very large area: South Puget Sound, Hood Canal, up through the Strait of Juan de Fuca. Next slide, please. So just a couple of highlights of the region. We do have 15 federally recognized tribes that we share management responsibility with. We have about 1.7 million residents, or 23% of the state's total population. We do have a significant amount of undeveloped land, but a large portion of that land is currently privately held in industrial timber. And really the coast of Washington is where people go to recreate, and it's the region that supports much of our commercial fishing opportunities, commercial fishing industry, and aquaculture. And many of the coastal communities' economics are dependent upon the healthy fish and wildlife resources in the state. Next slide, please. So I'm going to turn it over at this point to Kelly, who's going to talk about some of our Director Susewind, to talk about some of our legislative priorities for the upcoming Supplemental 22 season.
Thanks, Larry. As we go around to each of the regions, generally there's a few questions about the big picture at headquarters. We're heading into our legislative session, starts January 10th. It's a short session, so we have alternating short and long sessions. The short session is a 60-day session, and it's called a sprint for a reason. We tend to have smaller bills and it's a supplemental budget year rather than a biennial, so it's just kind of an update budget. So I'll touch a little bit on what we are doing. It's probably going to feel a little bit like a fire hose because I want to get through it to get to questions. And so if I don't hit exactly what you're looking for, you can email us and we can provide more information. There's also much more detailed description of each of these on our website. So the first, these are legislative priorities. These are bills that we will actually be doing agency request on. The first is making hunting and fishing more accessible. This is an accumulation of several small things to help make exactly what it says, hunting and fishing more accessible. These are things like aligning our youth age. Right now we've got 15 and 16 for fishing and hunting. This will align them at 16. It provides a $20 discount for your first hunting license after you finish hunter safety, so we can get a little easier entry for those folks. It provides the ability to go to our lowland lake fishing opener on a temporary license, so it's a little cheaper. Hopefully get even more people out of it. That's our big event of the year. Most participants of anything we do in a day in a year, and hopefully this will make it even a little bit easier. It also provides resident rates for our licenses for full-time college students and some military personnel as well. So just an accumulation of little things that individually aren't huge, but we're hoping that adds up to a tolerable package that we can get through in this short session. Expanding eligibility for ADA. This is really catching us up on the federal ADA. We as an agency have many of our rules are dictated by legislation. This is one that our advisory committee, it actually specifies which disabilities you have to be on the committee. We're going to open that up to any disability under the ADA. You can be a member. We're also going to add a couple positions seek to get legislative approval to add a couple positions to have people who work with disability folks. They've got some great ideas, and we want to have them on that advisory committee as well. Increasing access to state lands. Right now, through the Discover Pass, the Department of Parks has the ability to give 12 free days a year where you don't need a Discover Pass. The shortcoming, in my mind, at least from DFW, is that it only applies to parks lands. So if you're on DFW land, you still need to have that Discover Pass on those free days. This would allow us to, one, be part of the free days as well, and it allows parks to coordinate with us and DNR to try to pick which of those 12 days, to try to pick one that's meaningful to our constituents, the hunters and fishers and hikers and bikers and folks that use our lands. So it's, again, kind of a cleanup bill. And the last one, I think, is also in that cleanup category. This is increasing our ability. This is another place where how we go about licensing is controlled by statute as well. This opens up that statute a little bit to make it easier to do electronic print from home, also to be able to show your license on your phone, kind of come into the modern era with this. We need legislative room to do that. And we also have budgetary requests to make sure that we're following other states. I don't think we're reinventing the wheel, so hopefully we can get something really helpful for our constituents in a short order. Next slide. I'll touch a little bit on our budget. Again, this is a supplemental budget year. The last state forecasts have been very good, so it's going to be a fairly good year for a supplemental budget, still supplemental. But at least on the operating side, there's a lot of money available this year. Capital is going to be pretty constrained this year. It's a little different than usual. It's often the other way around. So I'll touch on each of these very quickly. The freshwater monitoring, this is monitoring in Puget Sound and on the coast of our current fisheries as we try to comply with the Pacific Salmon Treaty, the Endangered Species Act, our co-manager agreement. We have a lot of fisheries going on out there, and there's more and more scrutiny on us, and we have to be accountable to demonstrate exactly what we're catching, when and where. So this is to implement that, to expand our current program to continue supporting those fisheries. The $2.4 million to improve wildlife monitoring, it says including mountain goats. This also includes deer, elk, bighorn, goats, even turkeys. So this is a catch up. We do a lot of work these days with electronic collars. Most of that work has been done with one-time funding. And as those collars wear out, we have to replace them. That means buying new equipment, capturing animals, and also doing some work on the turkey, as I described as well. So this is an accumulation of all that. And hopefully we could get into a position where we have the ongoing funds and not have to ask for it on a replacement basis. Salmon for their Growth Management Act. So under the State Growth Management Act, the counties and cities have to plan a long-term plan. That plan is updated every about 8 years. We're coming into a cycle where some of those plans are about to be updated. Fish and Wildlife, Department of Fish and Wildlife are the technical experts that support those updates. And it's critical that we help those jurisdictions get salmon recovery built right into the Growth Management Act. That's where, Larry talked about 1 million people recently added to the state. We expect that many more again. We need to be smart about how we put people on the landscape if we're going to continue to have healthy fish and wildlife populations. This is kind of the ground floor of that, and make sure we're funded to provide that support. The initial counties are King, Pierce, Snohomish, and Kitsap that are coming up for big updates. The $1 million building salmon team capacity, managing fish, it gets more and more complicated all the time. It's more and more based on some pretty sophisticated models. We need to keep up with the times. This builds some capacity. We have got some of the most brilliant salmon modelers in the world, I believe, and we have trouble keeping up with all the work that they have to do. So this adds to that. Again, it gives us the capacity to really support our current and hopefully additional fishing. The forage fish spawning monitoring, this is something we've been doing for a long time. It's critical for our understanding. This is sand lance, anchovies, herring, etc. Some smelt. Been doing it for a long time. That got moved to another agency's budget and it got trimmed. So we're wanting to make sure we can maintain that long-term database so we can make sure we know the basic productivity that supports all of our fisheries. It's also a pretty cool deal that we do most of that through the Washington Youth Corps. So it's a good opportunity for income for those folks and an opportunity to be exposed to a career with the fish and wildlife and monitoring. Hatchery production and compliance is really just that. It's to catch up on our hatchery cost of doing business. Big chunk of this is for marking. So adipose fin clipping, huge effort. We clip probably more fish than anybody in the world in Washington State. And we need to make sure we stay on top of that to support our mark selective fisheries. And then we have to stay compliant with all of our permits, discharge permits, permits to modify and improve our hatcheries, et cetera. So this is really a cost of business increase. Support safe and sanitary, I told you it'd be a fire hose, safe and sanitary water access sites. We've got about 33 wildlife sites and over 500 water access sites. In the last year, it's driven somewhat primarily by COVID. We've seen a huge influx to our lands, which is a great thing. That's what we want. We want people out there recreating. 32 million estimated visitors on our land last year. With those increased visitors, we are seeing increased refuse, increased just major upkeep stuff. So we need to get out there. This is for our water access sites. Make sure they're clean, safe, and sanitary. We want people to keep using them, but with the vandalism, the increased trash, et cetera, we just got a bigger job to do. This gets us caught back up on that. Fish passage rulemaking, the legislature a couple of years ago directed us to do rulemaking. This is to provide the support to do that. This is really around flow and fish screening primarily. And then lastly is monitoring for recreational shellfish harvest. Much like our finfish, it's getting more and more difficult to manage. These are more complex. We need to make sure we have monitoring so we really know what's going on. This enhances that monitoring in Puget Sound and a bit on the coast. So that's my whirlwind of activities that we'll have going to the legislature starting here in a few weeks. Again, all this is available in more digestible form on our website. So I encourage you to go there. And if you don't find what you need there, send us an email. That we'll make sure the email's in the chat and we'll respond to your questions. I think that's enough of me blasting at people. I'll turn it back to Larry for your turn.
All right, thanks, Kelly. So I'm going to go pretty quick. We did want to touch real quick on some specific topics, that are of pretty high importance, a lot of interest in them. But I also am looking at the questions coming in, and there's a lot of them. So I don't want to use a bunch of our time. I guess just one quick plug though. We've got a group of folks that work here in the Region 6 office in Montesano that are accessible. We're going to open the doors to the Region 6 office on January 3rd, but we're open now for calls and any inquiries about the business that's important to you and that we manage. I just encourage you to reach out to staff. They love hearing from people and sharing their work with the public. And so I'm hoping that people will take us up on that opportunity or swing by and just drop by the regional office beginning January 3rd. Real quick, well, you can't even mention Region 6 without talking about Razer Clams. What an amazing year we've had. Off the charts total allowable catch preseason. Dan Ayers and his team have done a phenomenal job of providing those opportunities. We're going to break a record this year with a number of digs. Even some folks that are brand new to clam digging are reaching out to their office and just finding limits. So it's a great opportunity. I know we jumped out of the gates here with a bonus limit of 20 clams. We're going to reel that back in just to make sure that we offer those opportunities in the spring. We don't want to compromise that. I don't think there's anything that would indicate that we're not going to get there, but again, just wonderful job by Dan Ayers and his team of managing that opportunity and those digs. Next slide, please. So you don't want to duck the tough questions. Obviously, steelhead has been a challenge, as James talked about earlier. Pacific Northwest declines have been documented from the Skeena down to California. So we're not unique in this challenge that we face. We've seen some of the lowest preseason forecasts that we've ever documented for some of our coastal returns. And these are populations that were strong for many years, despite fairly high exploitation rates. So folks are digging in. We're making some really difficult decisions. We made some difficult decisions this year to really reduce our impacts on these fish, with the hopes that when we see improvements in marine survival, that we will be able to take advantage of some of those. And that has had an impact on folks that rely on, business wise. We do have a very robust guiding industry and businesses that are surrounding that. So these were not decisions that were made easily without significant consultation with the public through a variety of scheduled town halls. And I feel like we landed in about the best place we could relative to the opportunities that we felt wouldn't compromise our conservation commitments in the future of steelhead opportunity. So stay tuned. Hopefully things will turn around this year. I know we're not fishing on several river systems, but it's just a difficult challenge that we face. But there is some opportunity to get out in limited capacity on the coast and target steelhead. The good news, I don't want to pass up some opportunity to talk about good news here, but the preseason expectations for 2021 for salmon were optimistic. We're good, not optimistic. We were looking at preseason forecasts that were better than we've seen in quite a few years, particularly in the Columbia River system. The fish folks are in the process of right now of postseason assessments and evaluations to evaluate how well we did relative to preseason expectations. And as James said earlier, it appears that most, if not all, of our coastal stocks either met or exceeded preseason expectations. So we're hoping that we continue on this upward trend where we're seeing opportunities that that can be supported through those more robust populations and returns. We got some good news yesterday, relatively good news yesterday on the spring Chinook front on the Columbia River, and fingers crossed for continued good news. So we'll announce the North of Falcon meeting schedules, which will include the release of the preseason forecast for our salmon coastwide and in Puget Sound. And I would refer folks to the WDFW website for a list of the meeting schedules that will be announced here probably sometime in January. Next slide, please. I did want to hit on a couple of real key points. We've got a whole team of folks that are working on both acquisitions and restoration of habitat. Those acquisitions are done for a couple reasons, obviously conservation commitments and the recovery of threatened and endangered species, and also for recreation. And a lot of times those are mutual. Both of those benefits happen from acquisitions. But one acquisition I did want to share is the continued movement toward securing the alpaca farm down in Tenino, about 1,500 acres. We're under contract right now to get that land into WDFW ownership. We want to thank our partners at Conservation Fund and working with the county, and really looking forward to an opportunity to share that with the people of the state. Really good opportunities there for the conservation work we're doing for the prairies, and also significant increases in opportunity for recreation. Lots of work happening in habitat restoration, but one I want to highlight is the Dungeness River Levy Setback project. And this is, if there's an example of collaboration between NGOs, tribal partners, counties, state, federal government, then I don't know if I've seen it, but this is an amazing project where it's going to significantly improve the conditions in river for several species of fish, steelhead, Chinook, and it's just a really great opportunity. You can learn more about that on our website as well. So I will leave it at that. Next slide, I guess, please, and we'll talk real quick about kind of the next steps here. And again, we want to hear from you. If you have a question, we've got a bunch of them queued up here. It looks like 15 or 20 of them queued up already, and we'll get through as many of those as we can. So if you raise your hand, there's a bar at the bottom of, if you're on the Zoom, you can raise your hand through that function. If you've on a mobile device, there's more options. You can push *9 to raise your hand. And I believe we're also taking questions on Facebook Live. So I'm going to jump in. I think that's where we jump into the questions here. If we want to maybe turn off the PowerPoint, and Kelly and I'll jump in and get as many as we can through here. And I do want to remind folks that if you don't get your question answered, because there's a whole bunch of them here right now, I don't know if we're going to get through them all. We'll do our best to get to, if you can email the agency, somebody's going to put a link up, I think, for an email here if we haven't already done it, and we'll do our best to get back to folks on those. So let's just dive in, huh, Kelly? So question one is, what is the coastal steelhead recovery long-term plan? And that's a really good question. There's I'll jump in, Kelly, first, and maybe we can, if you have anything to add. So we're obviously the first thing in front of us is to reduce our mortalities, to make sure that we're putting as many fish on the spawning grounds as we can. Despite conservation measures that we took last year, we still didn't meet our escapement objectives on many of those populations. And the preseason forecast for those populations this year was below our escapement goal in many of those. So that is our first and foremost commitment. And then long-term is to continue to monitor all sources of mortality to try to identify the things that are within the WDFW control, and to make sure that we're using the best available information in terms of productivity, making sure that we're putting the escapement goals are adequate, and that we're maximizing the amount of habitat. The other thing is we're addressing the conditions of the habitat. We're making significant progress in addressing challenges specifically in the Chehalis River system. Those are through a collaborative or partnership through the Office of Chehalis Basin and through our tribal partners. And I think that we've made some significant headway there, but it's going to take a long time. Riparian work has been identified as one of the main goals for that, the limiting factor analysis in the Chehalis Basin. And so I think that's really the long-term goal the long-term recovery plan at this point, is to address those things that are within our control, and fingers crossed for some support from ocean survival, some productivity in the ocean. Next question. This is probably one for you, Kelly. What can we do to restore spring bear seasons in Washington State?
Sure you don't want to take that one, Larry?
I think you're well suited for that one.
So if you are on the side of the coin that thinks we need to reestablish those seasons, I would encourage you to, one, make sure you're informed, track what's going on, and reach out to commissioners and let them know that. Commissioners put a lot of value in what we hear from the public, and so provide that to the commissioners. The commissioners voted, as you well know, on a 4-4 tie recently on whether or not to have a 2022 spring bear hunt. With a tie, we don't have a majority. We need a majority to have the hunt. So there's currently not one scheduled for 2022. As part of that, the commissioners said they wanted to evaluate this over the coming year. So there will be another opportunity next year to determine this, determine whether we have that season or not. In addition, the commission will be hearing petitions for rulemaking. We've received a couple petitions for rulemaking to reinstate or to establish it in detail. Would be actually an establishment of a 2022 spring season. And that is scheduled, I believe, for a January 21 meeting of the commission to determine whether or not to grant that petition or deny that petition. So that's the next opportunity for that. So as you know, the agency's been supportive of the hunt. Right now, the next opportunity would be the petition. That's clearly in the commission's wheelhouse. They're the deciders of that. And so if you have an opinion on either side of that question, your best bet would be to reach out to commissioners and let them know how you feel. And you can do that through the agency as well. And we'll make sure that all those suggestions get passed on to the commission.
Thanks, Kelly. So next question is, give us a status of the recreational South Sound Marine Area 13 crab fishery. So this is one that's kind of dear to my heart. I did spend a bit of time in that fishery early on. And I know that that's a difficult one for a lot of folks. It was a really popular, highly productive fishery for a long time where folks could go and participate and expect success, and both recreational and commercial fishers were doing well. I know that one of the tools we use to set our seasons for recreational crab is to do our annual assessments, and we have a team that works on that. And the population of Dungeness crab significantly declined several years ago, and that has not recovered. We only harvest crabs that are of legal size, of male crab that are 6 1/4 inches. And so we believe it's a very sustainably managed fishery, both on the coast and in Puget Sound. And there are other factors. It's not a over harvest issue. We believe that it has more to do with productivity and how currents move around in Puget Sound and how those crabs settle out and contribute to fisheries down the road. We'll continue to monitor that and obviously try to create or provide some recreational opportunity if and when the population suggests there's harvestable crab there. But the state and the tribes have not been fishing in Marine Area 13, which is in Deep South Sound, by the way. It's south of the Tacoma Narrows Bridge, all the way down to Olympia. All right. Question from Richard on Facebook. When will be the first opportunity for a wolf hunting season in Washington? I'm guessing that's you, Kelly.
I guessed you would guess me. So I'll give you basically a status. Right now, there certainly will not be a wolf season. While wolves are in the recovery state, they are listed statewide under state endangered species. So the first step to even head in that direction, should the commission choose to support that, would be through, they need to be delisted to make that even a legal consideration. We are currently doing a periodic status review. That's basically where we look at the population to see whether it is warranted to continue with its protected status or not. That's currently going on. University of Washington is doing some modeling to support that. And so I would say right now, I would be looking at, we need to continue and complete the recovery of wolves in Washington at a statewide level. And then we have to look to long-term management and what that management looks like. So don't want to evade the question, but we're nowhere near to even the point where we can consider that right now.
Thanks, Kelly. So please give us an update on what's happening with the Wdfw access at Snow Creek. So I can jump on that one. So we do have folks we did receive support. The Snow Creek is located just, I guess it's east of Nia Bay and west of CQ, but it is a access area that we WDFW acquired in the 80s, maybe the late 70s. And for many years it was operated as we had a concessionaire in there that was running it, and it finally got to the point where it was not serving us in a way that was both environmentally in compliance, and also just a variety of challenges with keeping the water clean there. So we received a support from the legislature to do a assessment and to develop a restoration approach or recommendations, and we're in that process at this point. We are working with the Makah tribe as well on some of the details of what that might look like up in that part of the country, and we will be providing a recommendation back to the legislature and capital request at some point in the near future. I'm not sure if it'll happen this next full session, but very soon. And I know that we're working on a variety of different options, and we'll probably be reaching out at some point here to the community and to the public for thoughts on how we should be managing that property. So question about where are we at with Wainuchi mitigation monies? So the good news there is just again, folks, the Wainuchi mitigation, when the dam, the impoundment was created and hydropower was added to the Wainuchi Dam, that mitigation money was set aside and went into an interest-bearing account to be used to mitigate for loss of salmon and steelhead resources. There was some concerns about how that money would be used, and we couldn't reach agreement with our co-managers on exactly how to move forward. A couple of years ago, we finally got in a spot where we could agree, and we developed a spending plan. We shared that with the public. Certainly not perfect. We've got some capacity issues in the Wainuchi itself, where we're going to be needing to use some of our facilities outside of that Wainuchi itself, the Kitsap primarily, to help us with some of the production. And the good news is we have a meeting on Thursday with Tacoma Power You
muted yourself, Larry.
I don't know how I did that. Maybe a good thing. Anyways, long story short, we are meeting with Tacoma Power to draft a letter to FERC asking for support on the co-manager developed spending plan that'll significantly reduce our productivity within the Wainuchi and Kitsap basins. So looking forward to that. Let's see. Lots here. Do we have any early indications of how the season changed for grouse, improved conditions or improved hunting? I don't know if you've seen anything on that yet, Kelly. Remember, we delayed the grouse season by, I think, a couple weeks this year.
We did, and this is a good opportunity, Larry. I was going to kind of prod you to bring the RMT into this. So
good idea.
Yes, the big portion of tonight is to hear directly from them. So I'll take a back seat and kick it over to, I assume, Brian.
Yeah, and I was expecting Larry to kick it to me, but he kicked it to you. Yeah. Usually with a change like this, it takes a few to several years to really know, what kind of a difference it's having with any species, really, unless something shows up right at the beginning that, is really obvious that you did the wrong thing. But it'll be a few years before we know what kind of an effect it's having. The other thing we're doing is we are trying to get some some new types of surveys for forest grouse started that we haven't done in a long time. Basically trying to assess broods and things like that that haven't been done for many years.
Thanks, Brian. So we do have one here. Are there any plans to expand marine mammal predation removal from Region 5 to Region 6? I don't know who the right person for that one is, but I know we have a team that works closely with our federal partners and tribal partners in Region 5, I think is what the folks are referring to. And it's a very closely monitored and regulated program that is addressing habitual offenders at and near the locks, or excuse me, the fish ladders on the river. I think it's at least I haven't heard of any removal programs that have been looked at for Region 6 at this point.
So I can take a bit of a stab at rounding that one out, Larry, even after I told you to pass it to other folks. So I believe this is probably referring to our marine mammal work on the Columbia specifically, which is that's actually under the Marine Mammal Protection Act, a federal act. And it is a Protection Act, not the Recovery Act, Management Act, but Protection Act. So it's incredibly stringent on what we can do with marine mammals. We actually were able to get that act amended through Congress, a literal act of Congress to get it amended to allow us to do removals more expeditiously. We could do them before, but this just basically streamlined the ability for us to do that. It is specific though to that portion. It basically says that those sea lions in particular that are way up the river where they shouldn't be, if they're there, they're there for no good purpose, and so that we have the ability to remove them. And before it was much more onerous, it take a while to even explain it. But it is limited to just that. So we don't have that same authority on the coast or in Puget Sound. We do recognize that predation problems are a problem on the coast and in particularly in Puget Sound. And we're doing a lot of work right now to get that scientific baseline to allow us to figure out what would be the right management controls there, and to have the foundation to go after a potential permit and or amendment as well to be able to manage them. So an actual removal program, no. Setting the stage so that we might be able to get there when determined necessary, I would say yes. And I don't know if your regional management folks have more to add, I'd welcome that.
I think Stacy
covered.
Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I think you covered it pretty well, and that it's really what made that happen on the Columbia River was the unnatural barrier at Bonneville Dam more than anything else. That was a real pinch point for the fish.
And Stacy's flagging me that we've got a Facebook Live question here.
Yeah, Larry, we have a question from, and I apologize if I mess up this name, Reve and Aaron. So I'm going to unmute and let them ask a question verbally. Go ahead, Reve or Aaron.
Thank you. Thank you guys for putting this on. I guess this is mostly for Director Susewind. I have 4 issues I'm hoping that you can address in regards to coastal steelhead, as you would imagine. I'm disappointed that there were no ADA accommodations being made this year again. Also, I don't know if you're aware that the Soldeck hatchery is limited to a wheelchair-only boat launch and no handicap access, which your team has stated was the mandate that they were required to meet and were meeting. There are stricter regulations on rivers above escapement than even some of the rivers with ESA listed steelhead. For example, on the ESA listed Skykomish River, anglers can fish with bait, barbs, multiple hooks, and from a boat for hatchery steelhead through February 15th. What considerations were given to the 2016 regulation changes that were made in regards to the using the 1.3 interception rate that is now being pulled in from the analysis from a study done by Bentley on the hoe, and is it being applied for co-manager agreements for the Hoe and the Quileute at least. I haven't seen the others yet. And then do you feel that the Coastal Steelhead Advisory Group that will be working on long-term plans is a good representation of the user group?
So that's a whole series of questions. We got a ton of questions as well. So I'm going to pass it off to James. James is our local expert. James is the one giving the advice on this. And I want to be respectful, but also we could spend the rest of the time on just this. And we got a whole lot of participants here. Reve, we have a lot of interaction. We're available to continue that interaction, but James, if you'd give her a shot, your best shot at answering those questions in a succinct way, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, hey, thanks, Reve. It's good to hear from you. As Director Susewind mentioned, we had this series of town halls for other folks that weren't aware of that, where we discussed, I think, all of those questions in depth. We've also had communication over the last few months on a variety of those questions. So I'm trying to think about which of those would be best for this larger group. I think maybe I'll just highlight that you referenced a report written by Bentley. I want to make sure folks know that's online. And that's the one place I would say on the coast for sure, but almost certainly also in Region 6, where we've done comprehensive creel surveys. So that's why you'll find when we are talking about these kind of finer resolution around management, where we've got declining populations, we're looking at places where we have published record of encounter rates on steelhead. Unfortunately, in Region 6, that's limited to the Hoe River. And that's the Bentley report you're referencing. So I hope that helps with that. And then there's a comparison that we've heard a lot that's, I think, a really good one, Reve, with the way we manage populations in Puget Sound. You named a few rivers there. And why is that different than places on the coast, or maybe even places in the Columbia River? And I think you highlighted this ESA listing. That's the big difference. And so with ESA listing, we not only get sort of more strict guidelines on how to manage fisheries, but there's also funding attached often. So increased resources around managing these populations that are really close to the edge. So we, Wdfw, in the absence of ESA listing, have highlighted coastal steelhead right now as one of those groups of fish that we need to monitor more closely and manage more closely. So without really refined estimates of encounter rates and catch, we're really relying on these limited tools we have, like gear regulations and limited seasons, and in some cases this year, full closures. So it's really a resource issue. We're going to learn a lot here over the next few years on what we need to do to recover coastal steelhead. The last thing I would say is Larry had a question. I think he answered it well around this longer term plan. And I think it ties in, Reve, here, that if we look at the statewide steelhead management plan, sort of these regulation documents we have, and these are online, and I really recommend folks go read that specific document. It's short and it has a lot of great information. But in a number of years in the past, we have not met the guidelines in that document. So our long-term plan is really to meet our management objectives. And I think that's why you see these regulations on the coast are really challenging for us and challenging for anglers. But the goal is to really meet these objectives and make sure during this time when steelhead populations are in decline, we're doing everything we can to protect them. And the long-term goal is to get back to fishing, how we're used to and how we like to fish. So I hope that helps. Thanks, Reve, for the question.
Yeah, thanks, James. So maybe this one, there's a lot of shoreline restoration work and fish passage work being done on McNeil Island. Has there been any discussion by the department or feasibility studies been conducted regarding establishing new populations of threatened and endangered species, such as Western pond turtle, or native prairie plants? And maybe
I'll take that one.
Great. Figured you would.
We are just a few steps away from completing a new management plan for the South Puget Sound wildlife area. If I remember correctly, it has been through a public review and is getting polished up for Kelly's signature. He probably hasn't seen it yet. But a lot of work in that new plan outlined in on McNeil Island. Not just along the shoreline, but we also want to explore native habitat restoration. I'm not certain if western pond turtles are included in the plan, but I can see where that certainly would be feasible out there. But another species looked at for the island is streak-horned larks.
Thanks, Brian. This one might be another one for you. Have any feasibility studies been conducted to reintroduce or reestablish Columbia white-tailed deer in the northern historic range or South Puget Sound Trough region? I didn't know that was part of their native range, is it?
I believe it is. And I'm not aware of any feasibility study or current efforts to establish a population in the Puget Sound region. Probably the first and biggest challenge would be finding a large enough footprint on the landscape to introduce and hold and be able to sustain a population. And it's pretty difficult around Puget Sound. I'm not saying it's impossible, but something that hasn't been on my radar.
Got you. Thanks, Brian.
Larry?
Yes.
Larry, I have another verbal question.
Okay.
We have Nathan. I'm going to unmute you now. Go ahead and ask your question.
Yeah, you can hear me?
We can. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you very much for having this meeting again, you guys. Mike had just a couple simple questions. I want to know if the Steelhead Harvest Management Plan has been signed yet with our co-managers. If not, why? I'm also wondering what's up with the Willapa Bay Creel program for this year's winter steelhead run. I was under the impression that we were supposed to have one, and I've yet to see someone out there. So those are my only questions. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Nathan. James, you want to help us out here?
Yeah, those are great questions. So, and they're quick, easy to answer. So the statewide, so Nathan, you referenced these harvest management plans. So folks know December 1 is the date that we consider sort of steelhead fisheries beginning. So our objective is to have signed management plans every single year before that date. We were successful with that in 4 of these coastal systems where we manage with our tribal co-managers. So those signed management plans will be put online as soon as we can get them there, Nathan. So that's pretty good news. So this is the Chehalis, the Hump Tulips, the Quileute, and the Hoe. You can email me directly and I can send you those if you want, but we'll make them more accessible than that. And then Willapa Bay, of course, we don't have tribal co-managers there that exercise treaty rights to target salmon and steelhead. And then for coastal creel, our teams are hitting the ground running. We've hired most of the staff to be out there creel surveying. We're going to do our best this year on Willapa Bay. I think in the coming days, you're going to see folks out there. But this is really a pilot year. So we kind of looked under the couch cushions to try to get some extra monitoring out there. But we're gonna, if you see those creel monitors, they may have even been out there already. I really encourage you and others to go out and say hi because this creel program is brand new in Willapa Bay and there's gonna be a lot to learn. The goal is that funding requests in the supplemental budget and sort of other budget requests will lead to sort of full scale creel monitoring in the Willapa system and other places. So I guess go out there and say hi. You're not going to maybe see as much monitoring as you want, but we're thinking 4 or 5 days a week, we'll have a team out there trying to understand what's going on with steelhead fisheries in Willapa Bay. So thanks.
Thanks for that, James. So next question we got here is, how is the acquisition of the Clallam Bay boat launch proceeding? And so just so folks know, we're talking about the CQ, I guess it would be the old Olson's boat ramp, or now currently Brandon Mason, the Mason family that owns that. We reached out, we had conversations with them several years ago about acquiring that boat ramp. They were interested in selling the whole resort. We finally landed on just acquiring the boat access and the boat ramp and the parking lots, 2 of them. And we submitted that through the RCO process for a boater access grant. We were successful, and I believe it was #1 in the system. And so we've been working with Brandon on some of the technicalities of that, but it is moving forward. We are still working toward the acquisition and the securing that for permanent public access to that Strait of Juan de Fuca marine area 4 and 5, which is in our minds very critical in terms of long-term public access. I don't know, and Mason didn't know, Brandon Mason didn't know exactly what the long-term plans were for his family, and we appreciate him and them working with us on that important opportunity to secure permanent public access to the Strait of Juan de Fuca. So we should know more very soon. I know our real estate team is working hard on that. All right, let's see. I got a couple more here. Sorry about this. There's some question about, is there an updated hooking mortality study included in the budget? Let's see. Bradley on Facebook wants to know more about how WDFW is working with Canada on international agreements to protect wild salmon runs. I know we're getting close to the US-Canada renegotiations, or starting to think about that. Kelly, you have any update on that, where we're at?
I do not have an update on that, other than, I think as folks know, we have, is it specific to salmon? Yeah, we have just redone the annexes for the Pacific Salmon Treaty. And so that's the latest that we have, and we're continuing to work with them. We do have concerns that certainly a large proportion of our fish are, in our terms, intercepted in those waters. And we're working to help to try to reduce that, but it is an international agreement, and I'm going to get over my head if I go much further than that, other than to say that we just completed the annexes, I think about 2 years ago, and continuing to work on the basic relationship with the Canadians in particular. It's also Alaska.
Thanks, Kelly. Next question here is 2022 Bristol Bay River system is forecast record return of sockeye 75 million. Not a single hatchery system in the bay. Why and how can they get the numbers with the same ocean conditions as the rest of the coast? James, I know you track the marine survival and ocean indices closely. Maybe some help on why sockeye are forecast to do so well?
Yeah, it's a good question. And there's a lot of, PhDs studying this thing, trying to answer the same question. So I'm glad you flagged it. What I will say is, if folks were out targeting coho salmon this year, a lot of folks were surprised, along with fish managers here, about the number of coho that were turning to coastal rivers specifically. And what we're learning about the ocean is not only are sort of, average ocean conditions not been as well as good the last decade, we're also knowing that they're more patchy than they used to be. So certain populations are performing really well, while certain populations are performing just terribly. Just specifically, those populations that migrate north to Alaskan waters are often doing really well. And so you think about sockeye salmon from Alaska that are, staying in the Alaskan waters that are really productive are doing well. Those populations that migrate far offshore and use sort of these off the continental shelf waters are not doing well. So we can put coastal steelhead in that bracket. So really patchy waters and really difficult to predict ocean conditions. So that's, I think, the short answer. But we're still learning about this, so I appreciate you flagging it.
Yeah, thanks, James. Maybe I know it's getting close to the 7 o'clock time here, and we've worked our way through many of the questions, but I'll put one more up here, and maybe this is one for Brian. I don't know if he's got an update, but has there been any updates since the funds have gone to University of Washington or WSU Vet School with to evaluate hoof disease. But I don't know where we're at. Maybe Kelly also might have something to add.
Yeah, there's a whole lot I could talk about, but WSU does, they have their research facility built, operational, and are making progress on understanding the disease. They have a website with information about their studies on it, reports and so forth. We do as well. We have a page on our website. The other thing that we have recognized, and is probably hard to recognize, is for a disease in wildlife, there really isn't a cure in a wild population, which is difficult. And we're looking at ways to manage the disease in the wild. We have a couple of pilot hunts out there this year that encourage hunters to selectively take limping animals presumed to have hoof disease, and offering incentives to hunters who do harvest an animal with deformed hooves. I think I'll leave it at that for now because it could go on and on and on.
Thanks, Brian. And I know we have staff that are specifically working on this issue. So folks that want more information, again, look at the website for more information on it, but we can certainly put you in touch with some of those staff that are working on that specific issue. So I think we made it through most of our questions. There's a few up there that were similar to some of the ones that we covered already. But again, folks, this is an opportunity for me to just give a plug for the Region 6 staff. And as you can tell from the passion you heard, and we've got a bunch of staff that really care about what we're doing and are dedicated their lives to serving the citizens and working toward our conservation commitments. So feel free to drop by the Region 6 office. Feel free to call us, email us. We'd love to hear from you and get your thoughts on how we're doing. There's a variety of different opportunities, like I said earlier, to participate in things like salmon management through the North of Falcon process, or just following the website to hear when our public meetings happen regarding everything from wildlife to fisheries to conservation. So I just want to sincerely share my appreciation for folks spending the time with us today, and turn it over to Kelly for any final thoughts that he might have.
Thanks, Larry. So I too want to thank everybody for spending their time with us tonight. We know everybody's really busy. Looking at the questions, we got to, I think you're right, most of them, but not all of them. So for those of you that have questions, I'd make sure we have that contact information. We'll get back to you. If we haven't answered your question, you can send us an email. The emails will be in the chat as well, and we will answer your question directly. I want to make sure folks, we try to answer as much as we can. We can't get to them all, but we don't want to leave people hanging either. So make sure we've got your question, and we'll make sure you get a response. Otherwise, thanks for joining us tonight. I appreciate it. We'll be back out. I look forward to when we can do it in person. And if you've got questions you didn't ask but thought of afterwards, you can always send those in as well. We'll make sure you get an answer on those too. So I think with that, I'll wrap it up, at least on my end, Larry. And thanks to the management team for being here as well. Again, I think it's crucial that you all get to know these folks in your region.
Thanks, Kelly. Have a good night, everyone.
Good night.